If the other 4 wives were still in?
No.
Oh, just me and Robyn?
Yeah.
No, hell no. And I'll tell you why. Because we already failed.
Other than some muffled screams and the quiet rustle of tissues being opened, the church was quiet, the atmosphere was somber, full of sorrow for the untimely death of Robyn Brown. He was too young. His death followed a private, agonizing fight. One he endured largely alone with Christine and Logan with him. Towards the end, in the front pew, up high Janelle sat in silence, obviously broken. Her sorrow was the sort that doesn't require words. It was emblazoned on her face across from her, and the sat Mary pale and unreadable, as though in some other place the older kids were here and there around the church Madison. Hunter, Gabriel, McKelty, and Gwendolyn all lost in their own personal universes of sorrow. Then, some 20 minutes into the service, the back doors of the church creaked open, heads swiveled, conversation ceased. Robyn and Cody Brown strode in hand as if making an entrance. Dressed in black as they were, it was impossible not to notice the flash of Robyn's designer purse or Cody's shiny cowboy boots. It seemed more like they were attending a red carpet affair than a funeral. They didn't linger by the casket. No soft moment of contemplation, no acknowledgement to Janelle, no soothing embrace. Instead, the firm click of Robyn's heels as they strode down the center aisle, front and center, and then, without invitation, Cody moved to the pulpit. He wasn't even supposed to give a speech. Janelle and Logan had planned out every aspect of the service, wanting to celebrate Garrison's life in a way that didn't feel forced or religious, but in typical Cody style, he made it all about him. He produced a crumpled piece of paper from his coat pocket, gazed out at the crowd of mourners, then started to read. His voice was somber, and his eyes darted back and forth between the page and the crowd. Garrison was a complicated young man, he started, and one of the toughest things God ever asked me to do was be a dad, particularly through tough times like these. She turned slowly, seated in her chair, her jaw clenching. Cody continued. We mourn not only the death of our children, but also the death of our influence, our position, and our legacy. When they are confused and allow outside voices to turn their hearts against their own kin. There was a stunned silence in the church. People whispered, eyebrows raised. The air was charged. Still, Cody replied, we loved him. Even when he pushed us away, even when he rejected our values, our way of living, and the love we tried to offer. Behind him, Robyn had a loud, dramatic outburst of sobs. It was not a quiet, communal sorrow. It was dramatic, almost melodramatic. She wrapped her arm around Cody's and sobbed into his sleeve as if she were the bereaved mother herself. The children couldn't conceal their responses. Some of them winced at various times. Gwendolyn covered her face, obviously disturbed by what she was being told. Gabriel sat with his fist in his lap, head down, his eyes heavy with burden. Logan appeared to be keeping himself together out of sheer force of will, his jaw tight enough you could see the tension in his neck, and Janelle got up. Cody was still talking, still waving his arms, still acting the part of the misunderstood dad, but Janelle approached him slow, steady and deliberate. When she came up to him, she halted and spoke, in a voice that was chilly but controlled. You don't get to do this, she said sternly. You don't get to be here standing and redefining who you were to him or who he was to you. You weren't there, he died alone, abandoned, and now you're here discussing your hurt, your pride. Her voice didn't increase in volume. She didn't shout. The room was so quiet. The air seemed to have chilled. You didn't know his pain. She went on, I did. There was dead silence. You could sense that everyone was holding their breath. Do you want the final word? She demanded, gaze fixed on him. You've had enough already. Sit down. And in an instant, Cody was paralyzed. His face, for the first time in years, bore something honest. Shocked with hesitation, Janelle turned and headed back to her seat. A moment later, the pastor also stepped quietly from behind and kind of pushed Cody away from the podium, but the crying didn't end there. Following the funeral, the tension that had been building up inside finally boiled over. Perhaps attempting to mend fences, Cody again approached Janelle, but she stepped back. Don't, she whispered but firmly, I don't want to hear a word. His voice was trembling as he replied, you're making this worse. You're the one splitting up the family. Janelle didn't yell. She simply spoke the truth. No, she whispered, that's what you did, you and Robyn. That's when Robyn intervened. Her face was flushed, her eyes piercing. How could you attack us like this? At a funeral, we loved him too. Janelle faced her calm but firm. Not you loved control, she told him. And when Garrison didn't comply with what you wanted, you turned your back. On him, you didn't love him the way he was. You only cared about who he could be if he played by your rules. There was then a silence, and with it a transition. Janelle withdrew, and Christine slipped away too. They were moving on, then Logan moved forward. His voice wasn't boisterous, but it sliced through the air. If you don't call, you don't check in, you only appear when the cameras are rolling, or when something is done that could put you in a bad light. His words fell like rocks. This is finished. He said we're through. There was silence again, heavy and final. Hunter, Gabriel, Madison, and Gwen crept together around their mother. A silent ring of comfort, a family bound together by grief, and now by reality. Cody and Robyn remained outside that ring. Standing on the outside looking in, later that night the family met at Christine's house in Utah. No cameras, no producers, only the individuals who lived through it. All the three women would share a husband and the children who had loved their times to love there. Brothered dearly on the table were pictures of Garrison under flickering candles. His memory surrounded the room. They sat together in the living room, surrounded by the silence that only sorrow can provide. Janelle had one of Garrison's favorite books. On her lap, she wasn't crying anymore. Her tears had dried up, but the sadness still lingered in her eyes. Christine spoke up. She was calm. We have to be honest. This cannot continue to do with Cody, to do with Robyn. We must stop allowing them to hurt us. Logan nodded. They're not our family, he said. Not anymore, not today. They told us what they're really like. Nobody protested. Not even Mary, who had been Cody's protector for so long, remained silent for a moment before finally breaking her silence. I defended him for years, she said softly, and I don't even know why today. I saw him destroy his own son. I'm ashamed. They wrote a joint statement, a line in the sand. No more contact, no more invitations, no more appearances, and they made that clear. To TLC, if the network wanted to retain the remainder of the family, Cody and Robyn would have to be left out of future filming. The news spread like wildfire. The funeral proceedings were already being shared online. A leaked recording of Cody's speech found its way on social media, where it was analyzed word for word on Reddit. Fans turned critics, line by line, post by post. The hashtag #cancel Cody trended within 4 days. Within TLC, alarm spread. Executives panicked inside and internal. Memos circulated calling for a revaluation of Cody and Robyn's place in the show. The viewers were clamoring for answers, and the message was unmistakable behind closed doors though. Robyn was on the edge. She implored Cody to act, to sue, to fight. Back to vindicate themselves. They're portraying us as the bad guys. She wailed, we did everything to keep this family together. But Cody had nothing left to say. No witty retorts, no apologies. His phone went unanswered. One at a time, his children had blocked his number. Even Robyn's son, Dayton, began to pose difficult questions. Why did we leave? Why were you always crying? Why didn't you talk to Janelle? There were no better answers one morning as dawn crept. Cody sat in the dim kitchen, sipping a cup of coffee. The house was eerily quiet upstairs. Robyn was crying again. He looked down at his phone at the last message. Garrison had ever sent him just a single line. You made a decision. Don't call me when it's convenient for you. And now there was no one left to call. The rest of the family went on without them. Janelle drew strength from her children, filling her life with support and love. Christine dived into a new life of grandbabies and recovery. Mary got out from under Cody's shadow and started to redefine herself to children, while still mourning began to rebuild. They found solace in one another and in truth, and as for Robyn and Cody, they disappeared from sight, reminders of a yesterday. The family no longer wanted to uphold the actual conclusion, did not start with the funeral. That was merely the time. The reality became inconceivable to overlook behind closed doors inside TLC. The consequences stung. Executives met in hushed, windowless rooms with binders full of social media analysis, viewer comments, and raw footage logs. They had endured scandal before, but this was unique. This was a tempest they hadn't anticipated. A sound engineer, someone who just couldn't hold his tongue anymore, leaked a snippet of Cody's eulogy at the funeral. It was less than 2 minutes long, but it went viral on TikTok, and X millions streamed in shock as Robyn cried histrionically in the background, like a bereaved mother at a funeral for a child she barely knew. As Cody accused his son of going astray, the backlash was swift. Fans who had long endured Cody's narcissism and justifications finally reached their limit. Viewers changed the channel. Veteran reality TV personalities demanded that TLC speak out. Therapists deconstructed the dysfunction on YouTube. Social media influencers dissected the toxic cycles in the Brown family. And a new hashtag arose, #, protect the Brown kids, a hashtag that trended for weeks as the backlash grew louder. Janelle, Christine, and their adult children refused all calls from the network. Not a word, not a whisper, just silence. That silence was finally broken by Gwen in a private Zoom call with only the producer she trusted. She laid it out plainly: we're not doing this if he's part of it. Same goes for Robyn. If this show is going to survive, something has to change, and that was the turning point. By early summer, TLC issued a bold declaration. The show would return with a new name: Freedom. No more emphasis on a man with several wives. That plot had played out. Rather, the new show would bring attention to the women on their independence, their healing, and the resilience of the children who had grown up in Cody's shadow. Janelle and Christine opted to return. So did Logan, Gwen, Madison, and Michael T. Even Mary, after much contemplation, decided to return on her conditions. She needed to concentrate on healing herself. When the cameras resumed, everything seemed new. The obligatory family gatherings were a thing of the past. So was the pretending to be a united family. No longer were there shots where Cody took over the discussion. This time the narrative was authentic. The first show began with Janelle walking softly through Garrison's vacant home. She had her hand on framed pictures on the wall. Her voice was quiet and open. "I didn't know how much he was hurting," she said. "This story isn't just about polygamy. It's about what happens when silence becomes a tool to control people." What ensued was a profoundly human tale of one woman who had survived emotional poverty and emerged the other side strong, happy, and with her grandchildren around her. Audiences returned in droves. Ratings skyrocketed. Viewers discovered something worthwhile again, something real. Not everyone, however, was partying in Flagstaff. Meanwhile, Robyn spent most of her time on the couch, hardly budging from her position. Every day she watched the trailer for the new series on her phone on repeat. She wasn't in it, neither was Cody. Their names were never mentioned. The show was all about the children and the ex-wives. For Robyn, that silence was deafening. In a fit of fury, she snapped her phone shut and threw it across the room. "We have to speak up," she spat at Cody. "We have to defend ourselves." But Cody wasn't the same guy anymore. Distant, tired, and a shadow of his previous self. He hardly reacted. He no longer leaped online to defend his decisions or lash out against the backlash. He spent most days in the den, unbathed, unmoving, unenthusiastic. So Robyn took matters into her own hands. She proposed a redemption interview, an hour-long podcasting guest spot, a feature show, an opportunity to share her truth. She was certain that the world simply didn't get her, and if only she could clarify everything, they'd get it. Then the host concurred. It was in fact one of the most notorious reality television scandals. Robyn showed up for the interview wearing all white, stiffly seated under harsh lights. Her voice was gentle, almost delicate as she started. "They made me out to be the bad guy," she said, eyes shining, "but I only ever loved Cody. I only ever loved our children." And then the sentence that changed everything. "They were jealous," Robyn whispered. One of the hosts blinked. "Jealous. They repeated, "You mean Janelle and Christine?" Robyn nodded solemnly. "They resented that our house had peace. That our children, my children, were more submissive. I loved Cody more than they ever did." It was all down from their montages of Robyn labeling Janelle bitter and blaming Christine for brainwashing the kids went viral. She accused Garrison of being influenced by gossip and rebellion. Her words were empty. "I see, it was too much. That night, Gwen posted a reaction video. Her voice shook with restrained fury. "I don't want to keep talking about her," Gwen said. "But I'll say this, Garrison wasn't rebellious. He was hurting." And for Robyn to sit there and act like the victim, Christine remained silent. She merely shared a picture of herself with young Garrison, both of them smiling at a campfire. The caption said, "To love someone, you have to show up." He knew who did. Even Mary, typically quiet, tweeted only one sentence: "Some truths need no defense. I stand with Janelle. I stand with Garrison." TLC acted quickly. An internal memo was leaked. Mere days. Later, breaking free is not associated with Robyn Brown. There are no future projects in the works. It was official. Robyn had been omitted. In the meantime, the new show was booming. Janelle was a popular speaker at women's empowerment conferences. Christine's memoir, The Third Wife Surviving the Silence, appeared on bestseller lists in a week. Gwen and Logan co-created a podcast called The Truth is a Sister and discussed spiritual trauma, authoritarian family systems, and taking back ones. Voice and Robyn, nobody invited her back. No more interviews, no more invites. Her attempt to take back the narrative had crashed. The sympathy of the people was lost. Cody likewise faded into a silent, vanishing act. He stopped showing up in public. No more tirades, no more claims, only silence and echo chamber of remorse. But the others, those who were silenced, spoken over, dismissed, they stood up. They grabbed the mic, they spoke the truth, and the world did not just hear it, leaned in. But Cody Brown has ever had one rule: avoid the law at all costs, even during the early days of Sister Wives. When rumors of polygamy prosecutions were circulating, Cody was not interested in taking the risk. Viewers can recall the way he suddenly loaded up the family and decamped from Utah under the cover of night in case he got arrested for his plural marriage, living then years afterward in December. Cody's name hit the headlines again, not for spiritual guidance, but for a close call with jail. A shocking video appeared on the internet, a rough-cut video of Robyn Brown talking about Cody's recent run-in with the police. She sounded strangely relaxed, but the situation was dire. Cody had come close to being arrested, though little was initially known about it. Robyn talked frankly. "We relocated in order to be safe. We simply wanted to be a family without being criminalized." At that time, the fear was genuine. She was talking about 2010. When the family relocated to escape what they thought would be legal persecution for being polygamous, the state of Utah threatened prosecution just because we were living as a plural family. Robyn recalled describing how judgmental stares from neighbors and snickers from friends made her feel isolated. But as of 2016, Fox 13 reported no charges were ever brought. The Leahy Police Department had never actually investigated Cody Brown, and Utah's own attorney general's office had long assured that merely living in a plural configuration wasn't in and of itself sufficient to initiate a criminal case. So was it paranoia or simply self-preservation? When Robyn recounted these recollections, fans pointed out that her tone crossed from victimhood into dramatization. Some thought that Cody's fear of going to jail never actually cohered into any actual threat of legal trouble. Others said that it was just another instance of Cody playing martyr man for Thecamaras. Because, let's face it, most fans think Cody wouldn't have made it a week in prison. Year after year, Sister Wives became so much more than its initial concept of watching one man live with 4 wives. With the passage of time, what had initially been a family test of love and religion became a public disintegration of control, dominance, and broken vows. Christine broke away, first stunning everyone with her brazen declaration of independence. Janelle did likewise, in quiet but firm style. Mary, after all those years of psychological limbo, exited as well. All these women had come to the point where silence no longer worked for them. In the meantime, Cody and Robyn, formerly the golden couple of the plural arrangement, fell back into a traditional monogamous union. The irony was not lost on viewers. By season 19, things had Changed It was no longer about the weddings anymore. It was about the kids, many of whom were grown up by then, bearing the scars and lessons of having been raised in such an unusual and oftentimes broken home. One of the most redemptive moments was at Christine's wedding to David Woolley in October 2023. It was a bright, festive affair in Moab, Utah, a happy counterpoint to the years of stress and domination. Guests in attendance included nearly all of the Brown kids and Christine's staunch supporters. Not there, Cody and Robyn, a hushed but unmistakable message. The future had passed them by. Interestingly enough, Cody and David had crossed paths a couple of times at family gatherings. And in a shocking instance during Sister Wives Tell, all part to Cody ended up confessing something fans didn't anticipate. "I like David," he stated, the awkward smile twisting at the edges of his mouth. He's ridiculously handsome." It was one of those instances where Cody's ego and clumsy candor clashed, but even amidst that discomfort, there was a glimmer of truth. Cody was no longer the star. His ex-wives had found peace, purpose, and even love beyond him. And he was still struggling to find himself without them. Real estate. It was the perfect fit. Christine and Janelle had both suffered through years of uncertainty, moving from home to home, working through murky finances, fighting for independence in a system designed to keep them beholden. Now, with hard-fought insight and their devoted fan base supporting them, they found they could not only create wealth for themselves, but for other women as well. The company, provisionally named Foundations, was not merely a real estate firm, it was a mentorship system. Christine provided the charm and empathy. Janelle provided the analysis and game planning. Together, they started running workshops for single mothers, newly divorced women, and even adult children of fundamentalist families seeking to recover their autonomy through homeownership. A new type of empire was taking shape, one based on healing and empowerment, not domination. At the same time, Cody kept his gradual drift to the periphery. The guy's trip with David never happened. It was a bizarre aside to an already unusual legacy, a passing fantasy that even he said wouldn't have worked for Christine. But Christine, she hadn't time to indulge in such foolishness. Her wedding had been enchanting, and her life now teemed with possibilities. In a special Freedom segment, she was seen standing beside David on the porch of their Utah home, discussing the launch of a family cookbook that combined classic Brown family recipes with innovative, healthier counterparts. Healing occurs in the kitchen, Christine whispered, her gaze gentle as she grasped David's hand. We nourished each other's souls before ever sitting down to a meal. It was the sort of moment Sister Wives never let catch its breath, too intimate, too raw, but freedom moved into it. Back in North Carolina, Tata Farms began to flourish. Madison's flower arrangements started trending on Pinterest. The farm, a modest but deeply symbolic project, was quickly becoming a destination in the making. Janelle, ever the strategist, had already filed LLC paperwork for event rentals, wedding coordination, and a farm-totable brunch service. Mary had shipped down several crates of her signature handmade wreaths and centerpieces. We built this from the ashes, Janelle told a small crowd during a soft opening event. And we're not done. Mary had finally found her voice too. After years of being misrepresented as bitter or distant, she was now affectionately known by fans as the Globe Wife. Her solo trip to England sparked a travel blog, and her Instagram was filled with smiling selfies, antique shops, and messages about resilience. She even started having women's retreats at her Utah B&B. No cameras, no drama, just quiet strength. Come for the silence, her ad said. Stay for the fire pit conversations. And the fans arrived in droves. Even Gwen and Logan sometimes participated in the workshops, bringing Gen Z and millennial views on healing from toxic spirituality and regaining identity. As for Robyn, her reputation never recovered. The disastrous podcast, her infamous white dress, the gaffes, the insistence that only she felt pain, it had all led to an unspoken exile. TLC made it plain she wasn't welcome back. Even the most devoted fans no longer viewed her as victimized. They viewed her as a warning to others and Cody, a ghost of the man who used to stage. Every family gathering, he no longer granted interviews. The man who once couldn't resist a lens now appeared to flee from them. Paparazzi caught him only once at a Flagstaff gas station. Gone alone and conspicuously ringless, he didn't say a word. He simply drove away, but life went on. The last scene in Freedom Season 1 featured Janelle, Christine, and their grown daughters standing beneath a wildflower arch at Tata Farms. It wasn't a reunion, it wasn't a performance, it was a gathering. When founded upon fact, Christine lifted a glass of iced tea and spoke with laughter to leaving quietly and returning loudly. The camera drew up to the North Carolina sky, expansive and opened a new chapter. Wasn't on the horizon, it was already in existence. The potential for revitalizing My Sister Wife's Closet sparked a surprising glint within longtime enthusiasts. While the jewelry business had lain quiet for years, its Instagram unseen for more than 5 years, interest was rekindled by a surge of nostalgia and the general public's strong investment in the postcard era of these women's lives. Christine mentioned it during a TikTok live. "What if we didn't open it again, but overhauled it?" she exclaimed, her eyes shining. Not jewelry, healing kits, affirmation cards, crystals, journals, perhaps even a series of herbal teas. Janelle agreed, proposing the brand name could become a holistic lifestyle brand. My Sister Wife's Closet 2025 would no longer be about polygamy, it would be about empowerment. For women seeking their voice, she elaborated. Whether they're in a marriage, out of one, or rediscovering themselves. Gwen, being the digital native that she is, volunteered to handle the social media relaunch. Logan, being the organizational development student he is now, began outlining a business plan. Even Aurora, one of Robyn's daughters who had quietly established an independent life outside of the show's drama, presented graphic design assistance. It was sudden but redemptive in subtle, meaningful ways. The next generation was proving that the Brown name did not have to bring shame and secrecy. It could change, and Mary could too. After years of sorrow and the notorious catfish debacle, Mary tried dating once more. Not on TV, however, she was using exclusive matchmaking clubs and online support forums for women. Breaking free from long-term spiritual relationships, while Cody had teased about securing her a spouse on a spoof show. Mary was polite and factoring out "I didn't require Cody." Playing Cupid, she smiled during a Q&A, "But I liked the energy." However, fans held on to the spin-off idea. TLC producers allegedly pitched an idea. Mary's Way, starting over at 50 travelogue dating show, therapeutic journaling retreat. Audiences adored the prospect of seeing Mary map out her next stage on her own terms. She'd go off to small towns, learn new pursuits, get to know people through coffee or volunteer activities, not as a spectacle, but as an act of quiet bravery. The show would not be about drama, it would be about discovery. In the meantime, Cody's absence was still notable. While the women soared emotionally, professionally, and publicly, he had effectively disappeared. The formerly charismatic patriarch of a reality TV dynasty was now a name invoked largely in past tense. The family did not forget him, they simply no longer revolved around him in interviews. Christine would aver, "Cody is part of our story, but he's not the whole story." Janelle echoed, "We've got too much life left to live to keep waiting for closure from someone who won't give it." And that became the new ethos of the post-Sister Wives universe, forward motion. Christine and Janelle's real estate business quietly flourished under the banner Solstice Really Group, Rebirth After Darkness. They became expert at assisting women to obtain their first homes, particularly those who had escaped controlling or high demand religious backgrounds. The business was profitable and very personal at Tata Farms. Weddings were starting to book up 6 months ahead of time. Mary welcomed her first sold-out retreat and Logan and Gwen's podcast. The truth is, a sister was in syndication on the big platforms. And in possibly the biggest surprise of all, TLC announced that the franchise wasn't canceled, it was transformed a new series. The Reclaimed Wives was in production. Not a reboot, a reckoning, a celebration. Gone were the days of waiting for Cody to get on board. Gone were the nights of tears in confessional rooms pleading to be picked. This was about picking themselves. No longer would Christine, Janelle, and Mary build their companies, forge relationships with their adult children, and explore love, freedom, and occasionally isolation, but not as a result of necessity. They were no longer survivors of a failed system. They were builders of a better one in 4 millions watching. They weren't just reality stars, they were mirrors, beacons, proof that it's never too late to leave, rebuild, and rise again. The symbolism